Welcome to Tales from the Trenches, Season 4. Today, it's my honor to have James Misner with me.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in the zone. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests. The podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
James is the founder and owner of the Kipos Group. With over 20 years of fundraising leadership, James brings both best practice and practical advice to clients, helping them raise hundreds of millions of dollars. James started the Kipos Group in 2022 as a direct response to the effects of the pandemic on fundraising programs around the country. He helps organizations, especially small and mid-sized ones, sustainably grow their revenue so that they can scale solutions to some of the world's most intractable problems. James is also passionate about creating conditions for collective and individual success that are embedded into organizational culture. When not working, James spends his time with his wife Sabrina and their 3 children. In 2024, James and Sabrina started a small family farm that are trying to figure out day by day. James enjoys hiking, skiing, and anything related to the ocean. So welcome, James.
Jack, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
We've all been on some great canvases or solicitations, as you guys call it in the States. I tend not to call it that because in Canada, solicitation is a whole other.
It means that here too, but we just live with the dual meaning.
So, sometimes as a fundraiser, you get called being a hooer anyway. So I'd rather not call it the exact same thing. But tell me about one of the best canvases or solicitations you were on and what made it like the best.
Can I tell about one that wasn't from me?
Sure.
Okay. Before I started Kipos, I worked at a large global humanitarian organization. It's called World Relief. Works with refugees and immigrants in the U.S. and people in communities in the global South. Incredible organization, 80 some odd years old. During the first Trump administration, I had to respond to the dramatic cut in refugees coming into the U.S. And I was younger. No one expected that this was going to happen, so we were still a little bit shocked and, whiplashed. And so I made the appeal, the crisis appeal about, help save our organization, okay? I did a lot of things right. We raised a lot of money, but the core messaging was help us get through this, okay? Because we were feeling that more than I think we realized. So it was a bad solicitation, bad campaign, bad canvas. Fast forward to February 2025. There were a team of people that I had gotten to work with and train that were much younger than me. The campaign they put out this past January and February, which was kind of a mirror image of the situation that I had dealt with, all those years before, was absolutely brilliant. Okay, no, they had some months to plan for it, but they connected what the now president had done to direct human lives and exactly how much it was going to cost per family to keep them from becoming homeless in the U.S. when the U.S. reneged on its financial contribution to those refugees. And they needed to raise something ridiculous, like $3.5 to $4 million in 60 days. It was a lot of money, in addition to all the money they already, had to raise. And they knocked it out of the park. Okay, none of the messaging was about them. None of it was overtly political. They weren't out there just trying to score, slam dunks, on Donald Trump. or something we've all learned is really hard to do. I mean, you're a Canadian right now, Tech. It's really hard to do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they made it all about the people they serve, and it was masterfully done. So this isn't what James did. This is what a team that I got to train did well after I left. And I've never been as proud of a group of people before that weren't my kids, in my whole life.
Wow. So let's flip it then. So we've all been on some real dogs of canvases or solicitations. So tell me about one that went off the rails.
Okay, I have two. Okay, and actually I have a prop in my drawer. I keep this in my drawer to remind me of how bad it was. Okay, and if you've worked for me before and are watching this, you know exactly what I'm going to pull out because you've seen it. It was, I can't remember if it was 2013 or 2014. An organization brought me in. They had cut the revenue, private revenue fundraising had been like decimated over 2 years. It was 50% of what it used to be. I forget if I got the job in October or November, but it was like Q4. It was late in the game. And I put together a campaign, and this is the mailer that I sent out. Okay. First of all, can you even see that? There it goes. Look at how bad the design is. It's just white space, out there. Okay. Give joy and suffering. Okay. That's the most generic appeal you could ever have. And inside, this was the copy. Oh, you can't see that. Darn it. Oh, there it goes. This was the copy. Yeah. It didn't say anything about what the money was going to do. It was literally just kind of, in American football, we throw these Hail Mary passes where you just lob it down the field and see if someone's going to catch it. No one caught the ball, just to be clear. And I remember it was a Sunday morning. We were traveling. I was at a friend's house, clicking into the CRM. Is anybody responding? And it was like, no, 0 were responding. That's a mass campaign. It flopped. Learned a ton from it. Probably was the best you could do with about 14 days notice, to launch a campaign, but still it was an absolute mess. The second was an individual solicitation. Okay. A canvas, request, an ask, a pitch. Let's put the other words there. This guy was a banker, whole career banker, and quite wealthy. And he led at his religious community, it was a Lutheran church, a massive campaign every year where they raised millions of dollars, and they did one project every year. This guy wanted to work with me. He wanted to work with our project. He wanted to be in the eastern part of Democratic Republic of Congo, the most war-torn region, in the world. He traveled there with me, which is not an easy ask to take somebody, to Congo ever, but especially at that time, there was a lot of active fighting at the time. And he wanted to say yes. And I thought this was a slam dunk. And so I sent him all the stuff over. And someone else got in there, and I'll tell more about this in a second. Someone else got in there and he chose them. Why did he choose them? Because they told a simpler story. He knew that our program intervention was better. He told me our program intervention was better. But he said, James, my job is to convince these, 5,000, 6,000 people to give to it. That's how I'm measured on my success. And their story was simpler to tell. This is why I say I would have told a better story when I was younger, if I could give advice to my younger self. That's why I didn't get the several $1 million from my organization, not because the work wasn't good, not because he wasn't convinced the work was good. He was convinced it was better, but it wasn't simple enough. I didn't take the complexity. I thought that I would win by explaining everything to him, instead of by cutting through the noise and here's the 1, 2, 3 step and here's the outcome and here's where your money's going to go. I did all of that, but I shrouded it in, all this stuff that we had learned on the journey together. And just simplicity scales and complexity fails. Someone else obviously created that phrase, but it's so true. Every single time, if you mire things down with complexity, it's gonna prevent people from taking the action you want them to take.
Yeah. And, far too often you deal with these huge case statements that wind up being like a missive. And I'm like, folks, we should be able to boil it down to like a 30-second elevator pitch. And if someone has questions, then by all means, you need to have the backup
That's right.
there. But, you don't need to present them with, the whole encyclopedia A through Z if they're just kind of looking at the index here. It just has to resonate, and you have to just inspire someone enough to go and ask the next question.
That's right.
And that's always kind of that give and take. So that leads into a great question, which is a lot of times boards and bosses give a certain direction that the fundraiser should be moving in or looking at that sometimes isn't the best direction to go into. And it's not out of malice. I find a lot of times boards and bosses just don't have the fundraising experiences. A lot of CEOs have no fundraising experiences. That wasn't why they were brought to that organization. It's just morphed over time that fundraising is part of their portfolio. So what do you think that boards and bosses should be doing that they aren't doing today?
Well, that's a great question. I love this question. I think boards and bosses, to the advice that I would have given James, 20 years ago, boards and bosses need to become great storytellers. Okay. I don't need a board to be a fundraiser for me or for our team or for our client. I need the board to tell a great story and provide introductions, not arm twists, not, hey, this is my friend that I've known for great stories. Okay. If you can just tell a great story about what this organization is doing, most development professionals can do the rest. And the board chair or the finance chair or the development chair can come in and do the ask, with a development team member. You don't need the whole 20-person board, to be able to do that. Because and some fundraisers will hate me for saying this, there's a lot of reasons people join boards and organizations need boards, and fundraising is just one of them, okay? Your board needs to represent the communities you serve. They don't always have access to money, and in most cases don't, okay? Your board needs to have legal expertise. It needs to have financial expertise. You don't build a board just because you want them to do your job for you. But it's very helpful when boards can tell a great story and open up new networks for you. So it's a both and, folks. It's a both and. Don't try to make it just one thing. So tell great stories. Second, I think provide introductions. And then third, I would say is listen to the people that are on the ground. I have a story to demonstrate this one, okay? Worked with a great guy for a long time. Actually, I was texting with him this morning. He's retired for the third time now. And he is one of the most wickedly smart people I have ever met, Jack. His ability to analyze, to create frameworks I've never seen anything like it, okay? But in that is an intrinsic assumption that everybody wants that type of analysis. And we were working with a donor together who was kind of a blue-collar guy. He owned a trucking company, okay? But he was immensely generous in the $250,000 to $500,000 a year range of what he would give just to us, let alone, other organizations out there from trucking, okay? Which, trucking is lucrative if you didn't know. You can make a lot of money in trucking. And this guy that I was working with, he was my boss, thought that, you know what? We could get a bigger slice of the pie if we just explained our methodology to the donor. Now, I knew because I had met the donor just wanted to know that his money was going to feed starving kids. That is all the donor wanted to know. And I said, no, let's not do this. Let's not do this. Let's just let him, let's just keep, yes, his money is going to feed starving kids. Yes, there's a huge methodology behind this, but I actually think if we go into that, it's going to demotivate the guy. Okay? Here's what happened. The guy totally ghosted us after the meeting. Did not hear from him again for 3 years. Not only did he not give to us again, it caused him to go to all the other organizations he was supporting, and he went deep with them. Okay? Are you doing more than just feeding starving kids? They all said yes, because they all were like, let's explain it to him. He stopped giving to them too. He aggregated his money into one organization that all they do is stand-up feeding programs. nothing sustainable, nothing long-term, nothing working with mom and dad. He literally wanted his money just to go to kids, which if you're in international development, that's not the best thing to do with your money. There's a lot of other things you should be doing. We didn't just turn him off to us. We turned him off to 7 or 8 other organizations. And the lackluster organization who all of us thought was like not just the JV team or the B team, but like C and D team got all the money. So listen to the people who have had the conversations with the givers every once in a while as a board. And that could save you from a pretty big, calamity.
This has been absolutely amazing, James. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, 2 ways, and it's really easy. One is LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn almost every single day. I post all my own stuff. There's no one else behind it, and I respond to all the direct messages I get. So James Misner on LinkedIn. The second's our company page, the kiposgroup.com. Kipos is Kipos, thekiposgroup.com. And there's a schedule a call button. And I love having, brief conversations with people that are just like, hey, here's my problem. What's your advice? If we never work together again, I'm just glad knowing I got to help you out. And, a certain percentage of you who do that will end up working together. So it all comes out in the wash.
Exactly. Wow. James, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me on, Jack. This has been a blast.